We had a lot of reactions on the Windforce 10 film that we made a couple of years ago with the Lagoon 52S on the Mediterranean Sea on our trip from Gibraltar to Ibiza. According to the weather forecast, we were supposed to have winds from 30 to 50 knots in the gusts for about 20 hours in a row. So that's a long period.
Ja, daar is de wind dan. Fok uit.
Ik heb volgens mij met een paalsteek vastgezet of zo.
Voor de zekerheid 2 riffs alvast in zitten. Maar het gaat eigenlijk nog wel heel relaxed, 30 knopen. Rood maakt zich nog niet zo druk. We zijn Marbella al voorbij.
As soon as the wind started to pick up, we rolled in the jib completely, and we kept the main with 2 reefs for the whole period in time.
Wanneer begint windkracht?
46,2, 46,6, 47. In the end, the wind was a little bit more than was forecasted. Oh my god! Oh.
Lukt de boot? Oké, hè?
The maximum gust we have was 56 knots. And to be honest, at that moment we couldn't go any more downwind. Of course, the apparent wind, the more downwind you go, the apparent wind goes down. So luckily we could keep the apparent wind low.
60.2.
It is good to sail with only the main. The boat reacted very well on that. But what the big disadvantage was for us is that at the moment the wind was constantly above 50 knots. There was no way that you could reef the boat any further. We didn't want to point the boat into the wind and try to take the sail down. So then you can only hope and wait that the wind's not going to increase anymore. Oh! Niet normaal, man! I was used to, when the wind is like that on a monohull, that you had to steer manually because the autopilot couldn't do its work. The boat would go from its course very easily. So I was used to, and even with a lot less wind than what we had, manual steering, and it was unbelievable how good this boat sailed. We were constantly on the autopilot, we never had to sail, and when we were inside, it really felt comfortable and nice, and we could cook and we could do the dishes, and it was absolutely not a problem whatsoever. Surfen nu weer van de golf af.
Wow! 20.4.
The only thing where I was really afraid of is I hope nothing breaks, because that would be really dangerous in that weather. So it is really important that you reduce the sail as much as you can. If we would have had 3 reefs at that moment, we would have put them in. But you make a choice according to the forecast, and then it's what it is. Is it the best that the last sail that you have on is the jib, or a very small part of the jib, or the mainsail? According to the manual, the last sail that you have is the mainsail with 3 reefs in it, and the jib completely rolled in. So we did what was in the manual, but it could be an advantage to end with a small part of the jib, because in circumstances like that, it's so much easier to roll in the last part of the jib if you want no sail at all, than to point the boat into the wind and take the last part of the sail down. That's just not an option anymore. We are very curious how it's going to work out on our new boat, the Outremer 55. We have to build up new experience with setting the sails and what is good in what kind of winds. But I'm sure that we will enjoy it a lot more when you can have speeds like this, like 15 or 20 knots, with all your sails out, and then you are totally in control. That's a much better choice than being in a situation like this. So the Outremer will be launched at the end of April and then delivered 2 months later. So we are extremely excited about that. Gezellig binnen.
20.9 max speed.
Maximum speed 20.9 knopen. Wauw. Het frontje schijnt alweer een beetje voorbij te trekken, dus het wordt iets rustiger.
Big waves.
Het is weer 43, 44 knopen wind nu. Houdt die boot goed, hè? Unfortunately, when the wind was at its worst, it was during the night. We have no images of that. During the night, we had one gust of 56 knots, and that was really scary. I was in my bed at that moment, and I almost fell out of it because the boat went 27 knots and stopped immediately. So that was absolutely the maximum that the boat could handle, and it was just as if we hit the brakes. In the storm, we had an average of 10-11 knots, and for the whole day it was like 9 knots or something like that. With our new boat, the Outremer 55, we have to build up all the new experience, because it will be a lot faster than the lagoon. What we also learned from this trip is, when you look at the weather forecast, always look at the gust and not at the normal wind, because what we found out that most of the time we had the wind speed that was forecasted in the gusts, and then the gusts were even higher. So and it will not always be true, but better safe than sorry, and so we always prepare for the normal wind being the gust, and then for a little bit more. That's what we learned from this experience. This experience helped us a lot on our Atlantic crossing from west to east last year, which you can see in episode 174.